My name is Margaret. I'm 74 years old, and I've always believed that with age comes wisdom. But nothing in my 74 years could have prepared me for the lesson I was about to learn, the lesson that nearly cost me everything. It began on a cold evening in December. The wind rattled against my little house, and I had been baking gingerbread cookies, something my late husband used to love. I remember the smell filling the kitchen, warm and comforting, as if he were still there with me. Then, without warning, the world tilted. My vision blurred, a sharp ringing filled my ears, and before I could even cry out, everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in my own bed. My head was pounding, my throat dry. Beside me sat Helen, my oldest friend, the woman I'd trusted since my church days 40 years ago. She was holding my hand, her face the very picture of concern. "Oh, Maggie," she whispered, smoothing my hair. "You scared me half to death. You blacked out in the kitchen. I carried you to bed. Don't worry, I'll take care of you." Her words were a balm to my aching heart. My children lived far away, busy with their own lives, and neighbors only waved from a distance. To know that someone had been there for me when I was at my weakest, I thought I had been blessed. For the next few days, Helen was everywhere. She came over with casseroles, folded my laundry, even insisted on sorting through my mail so I could rest. She clucked over me like a mother hen, shaking her head whenever I tried to stand. "Don't strain yourself," she'd scold gently. "Just let me handle it." At first, I was grateful. How many people had friends who would drop everything to care for them in their time of need? But then, little things began to gnaw at me. I noticed my checkbook was missing from its usual spot in the drawer. When I asked Helen, she smiled, almost too quickly. "Oh, don't worry. I put it away somewhere safe. You don't need to fuss with bills right now. I'll take care of everything." Something in her tone made me pause. Why would she take care of my bills? Another time, I caught her rifling through my jewelry box in the bedroom. When she saw me watching, she laughed nervously. "Oh, Maggie, I was just dusting. You know how these old trinkets collect grime." My late husband had given me that jewelry, the wedding band, the pearl necklace for our 25th anniversary, the little brooch shaped like a lily. Dusting? No, she was cataloging, measuring, calculating. But I silenced my doubts. After all, Helen had been my friend since we were young mothers, gossiping on church steps while our children played tag. She had been there when my husband passed, bringing me soup and tissues. Could I really believe she would harm me? The answer revealed itself slowly, like rot beneath the floorboards. It began the day my daughter, Elise, called. She lived 3 states away, busy with 3 children of her own, but she always tried to check in. "Mom," she said, her voice crackling through the line, "I tried calling you all week, but Helen kept answering your phone. She said you were resting. Why didn't you pick up?" My blood ran cold. Helen had been answering my calls, without telling me? When I asked her about it later, she waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Maggie, you need your sleep. You don't want to be disturbed every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes? Elise called maybe once a week. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The shadows of the ceiling fan stretched like claws across the walls, and the house felt colder than ever. My body might have been weak, but my mind was clear. Something was wrong. The next morning, I decided to get up early before Helen arrived. I shuffled to the kitchen, my legs trembling, but determined. There, on the counter sat my bank statement, left open, as if someone had been looking at it. The numbers made my stomach twist. Withdrawals, checks I hadn't written. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would wake the whole neighborhood. And just then, the front door opened. "Maggie, are you up already?" Helen's voice floated in, sweet as sugar. I shoved the paper under a magazine, my hands shaking. She came into the kitchen carrying a grocery bag, smiling like the very picture of kindness. "I brought you some fresh bread," she chirped. "You need to keep your strength." Her smile was bright, but in her eyes there was something else. Calculation, possession. And in that moment, as the morning sun glinted off her too perfect smile, I realized the truth. My friend wasn't just taking care of me. She was taking control, and if I didn't act soon, I might lose more than just my money. I might lose myself. At first I told myself I was imagining things. After all, it's natural to be suspicious when you're vulnerable. I wanted to believe Helen was only helping me out of love, but day by day, her presence grew heavier. She began rearranging my house, At first, it was innocent, moving my teacups from one shelf to another, folding my blankets differently, but soon, it was as though she were claiming the space. My favorite armchair, the one where I read every evening, became her seat. She even brought her own slippers and robe, leaving them draped over the couch like she lived there. "You shouldn't be up and down the stairs," she said one afternoon, closing off the door to the guest room upstairs. "I'll just stay here in the living room, keep an eye on things. Easier for both of us. Easier for her," I thought. She even started answering the door as if it were her home. The postman handed her my mail directly. When the neighbor came by with a plate of cookies, Helen stood at the doorway, smiling and thanking her, never even calling me over. It was as if I were a guest in my own house. One evening, after she'd gone home, I went searching for my jewelry box again. My hands trembled as I pulled it out from the back of the closet. My wedding band was still there, thank God, but my husband's pocket watch, the one he carried every day for 40 years, was gone. I rifled through the box, through drawers, under the bed, hoping I'd misplaced it. Nothing. I sat on the edge of the bed, the silence pressing down on me. Tears burned in my eyes. That watch wasn't worth much in money, but in memory, it was priceless. The next morning, I confronted Helen as casually as I could. "Have you seen William's watch? I can't seem to find it." Her face didn't even flicker. "Oh, Maggie, you probably put it somewhere silly. Don't worry, I'll help you look." She patted my hand with a smile too sweet to be real, but we never looked. She changed the subject, offering me tea, and the watch was never mentioned again. It was around then that I began noticing another pattern. My groceries were disappearing faster than I could eat them. Bread, milk, eggs, even the frozen casseroles Elise had mailed me. I lived alone. How could they vanish so quickly? One afternoon, when Helen had stepped outside to take a call, I peeked into her bag on the chair. Inside were 2 cartons of my milk, a loaf of my bread, and a tin of cookies Elise had sent. My stomach clenched. When she came back in, I forced a smile and said nothing, but inside, a seed of fear had sprouted. This wasn't just meddling anymore, it was theft. And yet, what could I do? If I accused her, she'd deny it. If I asked her to leave, who would help me when I grew dizzy again, when I felt weak? My children weren't here. My neighbors barely knew me. Helen had positioned herself perfectly. She was my lifeline, or so she made me believe. The final straw came one gray morning when I woke to find her already in the house. "Helen?" I croaked, pulling myself upright. "How did you get in?" She smiled, holding up my spare key. "You gave this to me ages ago, remember? For emergencies. Well, after the blackout, I thought, why not just keep it? Better safe than sorry." I stared at the key in her hand, my heart hammering. That key wasn't meant for her. It had been for Elise, in case she visited and I wasn't home. I had never given it to Helen, but arguing would be pointless. She always had a ready answer, always wore that mask of concern. And I was too tired, too alone to fight back. At least, that's what she counted on. That evening, after she'd left, I picked up the phone and dialed Elise's number. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the receiver. When she answered, I whispered, "Sweetheart, I need you to come home. Something's not right." Her voice filled with worry. "Mom? What happened? Are you okay?" I glanced at the door, half expecting Helen to walk in again. Just come as soon as you can." Elise promised she would, but she lived states away. It would take time, and in that time, I realized, Helen would continue tightening her grip. As I hung up the phone, the house suddenly felt colder, darker, though every lamp was on. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat in my husband's armchair, staring at the door. Helen said she was taking care of me. But care didn't feel like this. It felt like a cage, and the bars were closing in. After that call with Elise, I felt a sliver of relief. At least someone else knew. But until she arrived, I had to endure Helen's care. I tried to keep my suspicions hidden, but it's hard to disguise fear when you feel it in every breath. Helen seemed to sense it too, because her behavior shifted in small, unnerving ways. She started checking my pill bottles every morning. "Just making sure you're taking them properly," she said, her eyes scanning the labels. Once, I caught her counting the tablets under her breath. Another time, I noticed one bottle felt lighter than it should. That night, I laid all the pills out on the table, comparing them against the prescription notes I'd saved. 2 missing. My heart sank. Were they stolen? Had she been slipping them into my tea? The thought made my stomach twist. I couldn't prove anything, not yet, so I quietly began to resist. I made small changes, ones she wouldn't notice right away. Instead of leaving my wallet in the kitchen drawer, I tucked it under my pillow. Instead of keeping my jewelry box in the closet, I wrapped it in a towel and hid it behind the laundry hamper. When I cooked something simple, I portioned it out into small containers and placed them at the back of the freezer, hidden behind bags of peas and beans. They were tiny acts, but they gave me a sense of control. Still, Helen's grip didn't loosen. One afternoon, she arrived with bags of groceries. At first, I felt relief, finally, something she'd brought instead of taken. But as I unpacked them, I noticed all the labels were brands I never bought. All things Helen liked, her favorite cereal, her brand of coffee, her type of yogurt, nothing I usually ate. "Don't worry, Maggie," she said, patting my shoulder. "We'll share. It's easier this way. We'll share." My own kitchen had become hers. The unease in my chest grew heavier. I began writing everything down in a small notebook. Dates, times, what went missing, what she said. I kept it hidden inside an old photo album no one ever touched. If Elise came, I wanted her to see. But the strangest thing happened one Sunday evening. I was dozing in my chair when I heard the front door open. My clock read 8:45. Helen wasn't supposed to be there that night. I stayed quiet, listening. Footsteps moved through the kitchen, soft but deliberate. I heard the refrigerator door open, then close. Something rustled, plastic bags. Then, the creak of the stairs. My breath caught. She had no reason to go upstairs. My bedroom was up there, my closet, my jewelry box. I forced myself to stand, clutching my cane, but by the time I reached the bottom of the staircase, Helen was already descending, carrying something tucked under her coat. "Oh, Maggie," she exclaimed as if surprised. "Didn't mean to startle you. I just popped in to check if you needed anything. At this hour?" My voice was trembling. She gave a light laugh. "You know me, night owl." I thought I'd grab the laundry basket. Looked heavy last time I saw it, but her hands were empty. I stared at her, my pulse racing. "You were upstairs," I said softly. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned. "Silly me. I thought I left my scarf in the guest room last week. Found it. That's all." She brushed past me, patting my arm on her way out. The door closed behind her with a casual click, as though nothing had happened. But I knew something had. The next morning, when I opened my jewelry box, my husband's pocket watch was still missing, and now, so was my mother's locket. Tears welled in my eyes. This wasn't just control anymore. It was theft, violation. For the first time, a thought entered my mind that chilled me to the bone. What if Helen wasn't just stealing things? What if she was planning something bigger, something with me at the center of it? That evening, when she brought me tea, I waited until her back was turned and poured it into the sink. If she noticed, she didn't say a word, but her eyes lingered on me longer than usual, watching, as though she could read my thoughts. The mask was cracking, and behind it, I saw something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't care, it was hunger. The morning after I discovered my mother's locket missing, I woke to the sound of rattling in the kitchen. Pots and pans clanged, cupboard doors banged open and shut. For a moment, I thought perhaps Elise had arrived early, but when I shuffled in, cane tapping against the floor, it was Helen standing at the stove. She was frying eggs, my eggs. "Oh, Maggie, good morning," she said brightly, as though she lived there. "I thought I'd make us some breakfast. You need protein." I stared at her. It was barely 6:30. "How did you get in?" She smiled without looking up. "You gave me that spare key months ago, remember?" I racked my brain. Had I? Maybe after one of my blackouts, in a moment of misplaced gratitude, I had handed it to her. The thought made me dizzy. She slid a plate toward me. "Eat up." I sat, my appetite gone. Helen plopped down across from me, chewing with noisy enthusiasm. Between bites, she spoke as if we were partners. "You know, Maggie, you're lucky to have me. Not many friends would give up their evenings to care for someone, especially someone who can't always remember things." Her words stung. I gripped my fork tighter. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "That little blackout of yours could have been so much worse. What if you'd fallen and broken your hip? What if you'd hit your head? Without me, who would find you?" I forced a small smile, pretending gratitude, but inside, alarm bells rang. She wasn't just reminding me of my vulnerability, she was reinforcing it, making sure I felt dependent. Later that day, I found my phone missing from the coffee table. Panic surged until I discovered it in the kitchen drawer, tucked under a pile of coupons. When I confronted Helen, she laughed. "You probably misplaced it, Maggie. Don't you remember?" The way she said it made me doubt myself for a split second. But only for a split second. Over the following days, Helen's presence grew heavier, more suffocating. She began dictating my schedule. When I should eat, when I should nap, even when I should bathe. If I resisted, her tone shifted from sugary to sharp. One evening, I told her I wanted to watch my favorite program. "Not tonight," she said firmly, taking the remote. "That show makes you too emotional. We'll watch something lighter." I sat in silence as she flipped to a program she liked, her smirk barely hidden. The turning point came on Thursday afternoon. Elise had missed to visit, but she texted that she'd been delayed at work. When Helen heard, her eyes lit with something almost triumphant. "Looks like it's just us then," she said. She suggested we play cards. I agreed, hoping to keep the atmosphere light. But midway through the game, she leaned across the table, her gaze locking onto mine. "You know, Maggie, you're not as sharp as you used to be. People talk. They wonder if you can manage your affairs." My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" She tapped her finger against the table. "Your house, your bank account, your belongings. What if you forget to pay a bill? What if someone takes advantage of you?" I swallowed hard. "I've managed just fine." Helen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "For now. But what about 6 months from now? A year? Don't you think it would be easier if someone reliable handled things for you?" The implication hit me like a cold wind. She wasn't just after my trinkets. She wanted control of everything. That night, I lay awake, my heart pounding. The notebook hidden in my photo album felt like the only anchor to my reality. Every detail I'd written suddenly seemed vital. Evidence. Proof. But how long before Helen found it? The very next morning, my fears nearly came true. I walked into the living room to find Helen dusting the bookshelf where the album was kept. She looked up, her expression innocent. "Just tidying," she said. But her hand lingered on the spine of the photo album a little too long. I forced a laugh. "Leave that one, Helen. Old memories. Too fragile." She smiled, but her eyes narrowed. The walls of my own home felt like they were closing in. By Sunday, I knew I couldn't wait for Elise any longer. Something had to change, and quickly. Helen was escalating from hovering caregiver to controlling overseer. Soon, I feared, she'd find a way to make herself indispensable in the eyes of everyone around me, and once she did, who would believe me when I said she wasn't saving me, but consuming me? Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt. Elise, I hurried as best I could, cane clicking against the floor, but Helen was faster. She swept to the door, opening it with a smile stretched too wide. "Elise, what a surprise," she said, voice honey sweet. "I told Mom I'd be by today," Elise replied, brushing past her. "Hi, Mom." She wrapped me in a warm hug, and for a moment, the suffocating fog of Helen's presence lifted. But not for long. Helen set out tea before we'd even asked. She hovered, refilling cups that weren't empty, sitting just close enough to hear every word. Elise frowned. "Helen, could you give us a little space? I want to talk to Mom." Helen laughed softly, as if Elise had made a harmless joke. "Of course, but Maggie gets anxious when I leave, don't you, Maggie?" Her eyes drilled into mine, daring me to contradict her. I forced a small smile. "I'll be fine, Helen. Why don't you check the laundry?" For the first time, her mask cracked. A flash of irritation crossed her face before she smoothed it over. "Of course," she said tightly, leaving the room. Elise turned back to me, her brow furrowed. "Mom, what's going on? You sound different on the phone lately." I hesitated, then lowered my voice. "Helen's not what she seems. She's been controlling me, moving my things, making me feel like I can't trust myself." Elise's face softened with concern. "Are you sure, Mom? Maybe she's just trying to help." "No," I whispered urgently. "She wants more than that. She talks about my finances, about who will manage things when I can't. She's already taken things, my locket, my key." Before Elise could respond, Helen reappeared, a folded laundry basket in her arms. Too quickly, too timed. "What are you two whispering about?" she asked lightly, her gaze sharp. "Nothing," Elise said quickly, but Helen's eyes lingered on me. The rest of the visit became a performance. Helen played the devoted friend, fetching cookies, fluffing pillows, even pretending to scold me gently when I forgot where I put my glasses. She does this a lot, Helen explained to Elise, her tone dripping with pity. Sometimes she forgets whole conversations, but don't worry, I keep track of everything. My cheeks burned. Elise looked torn, her eyes flicking between us. By the time she left, I could see doubt clouding her face. Helen had planted it expertly. When the door closed, Helen turned to me, her smile gone. "You shouldn't tell tales, Maggie," she said softly, setting the laundry basket down. "It only makes people worry about you. And when people worry," she stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, "they start to wonder if maybe you shouldn't be living alone anymore." My knees wobbled. That was her plan. To make me look weak, confused, incapable, until no one questioned her stepping in as the one in charge. That night, I wrote furiously in my notebook, my hand shaking with urgency. Elise had to see the truth somehow. She had to understand before Helen erased every trace of who I was. But even as I wrote, I heard Helen humming in the next room, moving things, my things, out of their places again. Testing me, watching how long it would take before I doubted myself. The house that once felt safe now pulsed with danger, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about protecting my keepsakes or even my independence. It was about survival. After Elise's visit, the air in the house grew heavier. Helen was quieter, sharper. She no longer bothered hiding her suspicion of me. Each time I tried to make a phone call, she found an excuse to hover. Each time I mentioned Elise, her lips pressed thin. She began speaking for me when the neighbors dropped by, answering their questions before I could. "She forgets," she'd say with a little laugh, patting my shoulder as if I were a child. "But that's why I'm here, to take care of her." Each time, my heart clenched tighter. It was working. She was painting me as helpless, fragile, confused. But I was not confused. I was awake now. And I would not let her win. That night, after Helen went to bed, I crept to my desk. I took out the little notebook I'd been hiding, the one where I wrote down every detail, the dates, the times, the objects that had been moved, the words Helen whispered when she thought no one else was listening. "You'll lose everything, Maggie, unless you let me help. People think you're losing your mind. Maybe I should handle your mail. Your daughter doesn't have time for you like I do." I wrote it all, line by line, my handwriting jagged but steady with purpose. Still, words on paper might not be enough. I needed something Elise couldn't ignore. Something undeniable. That's when I remembered the small camera above the mantel, the one my late husband had installed years ago for security. I'd stopped using it after the batteries drained. Helen didn't even know it existed. My hands trembled as I found new batteries in the drawer. I climbed carefully onto the stool, heart pounding, and slid them in. The little light blinked red, alive again. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of power. The next morning, I played the part Helen expected. I let her move my knitting needles from the basket to the cupboard without protest. I let her correct me when I asked what day it was. I even smiled faintly when she reminded me how lucky I was to have her. All the while, the camera watched. Helen grew bolder in her little games. She leaned close, her breath hot against my ear. "Do you really think Elise believes you? Sweet old Maggie, so forgetful, so easily confused. No one listens to people like you anymore." I held my tongue, even as my fists clenched. The camera saw it. That was enough. Days passed like this, each moment tightening the net I was quietly weaving. My notebook grew thicker, my footage longer. But Helen was clever too. She noticed my sudden calm. "You're awfully quiet these days," she said one evening, her eyes narrowing. "Not so many complaints anymore. What are you up to?" I forced a laugh, weak and wavering. "Maybe I'm just getting used to your help." Her smile returned, slow and smug. She believed me. At night, though, I lay awake, rehearsing what I would say when Elise came again, how I would show her everything, how I would prove that I wasn't the helpless old woman Helen wanted her to see. But a small fear gnawed at me. What if Helen found the camera? What if she found the notebook? The danger was closer than I thought. One morning I woke to find Helen standing by my desk, her hand hovering above the drawer. My notebook inside. "What are you doing?" I asked sharply, my voice cracking. She turned slowly, her smile fixed but her eyes hard. "Just tidying." You leave things around, Maggie. You know how easy it is to misplace important things. I forced myself to breathe evenly, though my pulse thundered. Thank you, Helen. You always know best. She studied me a moment longer, as if weighing whether to press further. Then she closed the drawer, patting it twice before walking away. When she left the room, I sagged against my chair, sweat beading on my forehead. She was getting too close. That night, I moved the notebook into an old sewing box in my closet. Safer. But still, if she found it, everything would collapse. I had to act soon. The following week, Elise called again. Mom, I'll stop by on Saturday. Relief flooded me. This was my chance. I prepared carefully. I placed the notebook on the table where Elise could see it. I kept the camera rolling, ready to capture Helen's performance if she tried to interfere again. I rehearsed the words in my head. Look, Elise, here's the truth. You have to believe me. But as Saturday approached, Helen's behavior changed. She was sharper, colder, and then the night before Elise's visit, she stood in my doorway, silhouetted against the hall light. You've been different lately, Maggie, she said quietly, almost defiant. I swallowed hard. I don't know what you mean. She tilted her head, her smile thin and chilling. You should be careful. People who get too stubborn sometimes lose the little help they have left. And then she walked away, leaving me trembling in the dark. I clutched the notebook to my chest that night, whispering to myself like a prayer. Tomorrow Elise will know everything. But deep down, a terrible doubt lingered. What if Helen found a way to twist even this? What if tomorrow never came? Saturday arrived, gray and cold. My hands shook as I set the table for breakfast, though not a bite would pass my lips. Every clink of the china felt like a countdown, every tick of the clock a hammer against my ribs. Elise would be here soon. Helen floated around the kitchen with her usual self-satisfied air, humming a tuneless melody as she buttered toast. She acted as though it were any other morning, but her eyes betrayed her, sharp, restless, glancing at me every few seconds. She knew something was coming. By the time Elise's car pulled into the driveway, my pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. I forced myself to stand tall. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Elise stepped inside, brushing the chill from her coat. Her smile lit the room. Hi, Mom. She kissed my cheek, then glanced at Helen. Thanks again for looking after her. Helen gave a modest laugh, as if she were an angel doing heaven's work. Oh, it's nothing, Elise. Your mother and I managed just fine. I wanted to scream. Instead, I reached for the sewing box hidden beside my chair. My fingers trembled as I pulled out the notebook and placed it gently on the table. Elise, I said firmly, I need you to read this. Her brow furrowed. What is it? Before I could answer, Helen slid smoothly between us, her hand resting on the notebook. Just some scribbles, Elise. You know how the elderly get. They write down their dreams, their little fears. It's sweet, really. I snatched the notebook back, fire in my veins. No, these are not dreams. This is proof. Elise blinked, caught between us. Proof of what? I opened to a page where Helen's words were written in my shaky scrawl. You'll lose everything unless you let me help. Another page. Your daughter doesn't have time for you like I do. Elise, I whispered, my voice breaking. She says these things. She moves my things, hides them, makes me doubt myself. She wants you to think I'm losing my mind. Helen's laugh was sharp, brittle. Oh, Maggie, really? You're telling stories again. She turned to Elise, eyes wide with feigned concern. She's been paranoid lately. Writing things down like this, it's common in dementia patients. They imagine people are against them. I'm not imagining. My voice cracked. Elise, please, you have to believe me. The room was so still, I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator. Elise's face was pale, her eyes darting between us. Finally, she sank into a chair. Mom, this is serious, but I don't know what to think. Helen's been so good to you. Good! The word shot out like a bullet. She watches me, controls me, whispers that you don't care. She wants me dependent on her. Helen's mask slipped for just a second. Her jaw clenched, her eyes flashing with something cold and venomous. But she recovered quickly, placing a hand over her heart. Elise, I love your mother. I've sacrificed so much to care for her. Do you know what it's like to wake in the middle of the night because she's crying out? To help her when she forgets where she put her glasses, her medicine? She's confused. I've never complained, but this, she gestured to. Ward the notebook with a shaking hand. This breaks my heart. Tears welled in Elise's eyes. Mom, I don't know what to believe. Panic clawed at me. This was slipping away. All my careful planning, all my notes, it wasn't enough. Helen was too smooth, too practiced. That's when I remembered the camera. Elise, I said, my voice trembling with urgency. Look at the mantel. There's a camera. It's been recording. Helen's head snapped toward the mantel, her face draining of color. For the first time, Elise looked truly shocked. A camera? Yes, I whispered, my heart hammering. It's all there, every word she said, every lie. Helen lunged for the mantel, but Elise was faster. She grabbed the small device, holding it close. What's on this? Helen's mask cracked completely now. Her voice rose, sharp and desperate. She's manipulating you. She set this up because she's jealous, because she doesn't want anyone else helping her. I shook my head fiercely, tears running down my face. Please, Elise, watch it, just watch. The silence was suffocating. Elise stared at the tiny blinking light on the camera, then at Helen, who was trembling now, her composure slipping away piece by piece. I think, Elise said slowly, her voice firmer than I'd ever heard it, that we should see what's on here together. Helen's face twisted, ugly with fear and rage. No, you can't. But Elise cut her off with a single look. Enough. My daughter's voice had never sounded so strong. For the first time in weeks, hope bloomed in my chest. The truth was finally within reach. But even then, as Elise tucked the camera into her purse, I saw the fury simmering in Helen's eyes. This battle was not over, not yet. The house had never felt so quiet. After Helen stormed out of the kitchen, Elise and I sat side by side at the table, the weight of the moment pressing down on us both. She held the camera in her hands as though it were fragile glass, her thumb brushing over the small screen. Mom, she said softly, if what you're saying is true, this will prove it. I nodded, my throat tight. It is true. Every word. Elise hesitated, then pressed play. At first, there was nothing but the usual hum of life in my house. Footsteps, drawers opening and closing. Then came Helen's voice, sharp and unmistakable. You'd forget your own head if it wasn't screwed on. No wonder Elise never visits. You're such a burden. I closed my eyes as the words filled the room. Even knowing what was coming, it still cut deep to hear them spoken aloud. Elise's hand tightened around mine. Oh my God. The recording continued. Helen mocking me, calling me pathetic, planting doubts about Elise's love. Each word was a dagger, but with every cruel phrase, I felt lighter. Finally, someone else was hearing it. Finally, I wasn't alone. When the clip ended, the silence was deafening. Elise looked pale, her jaw clenched. She set the camera down carefully, as if it burned to touch it. I can't believe this, she whispered. All this time, I thought Helen was helping. I thought she was being selfless. She made you think that, I said quietly. She wanted you to believe I was losing my mind, so she could keep control. She never cared for me, Elise. Not really. Elise covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. For a moment I thought she might collapse under the weight of it all, but then she straightened, her eyes blazing with a determination I hadn't seen since she was a teenager standing up to a bully at school. No one talks to my mother that way, she said fiercely. No one. It was as though a switch had flipped inside her. She stood, squared her shoulders, and called Helen's name. Helen returned reluctantly, her expression taut with barely restrained anger. Well, satisfied? You've listened to your little toy. Now you see how paranoid she is, recording me. Stop! Elise snapped. The single word cracked through the room like thunder. Helen froze. I heard everything. Aloud. Elise continued, her voice low but shaking with fury. Every insult, every manipulation. How dare you treat my mother like that under my roof? After everything she's done for me, for us, you made her feel worthless. Helen stammered, her smooth mask crumbling. Elise, please, you don't understand. She twists things. No, Elise's voice was steel. I understand perfectly. You took advantage of her trust. You preyed on her kindness, and you tried to poison me against my own mother. Helen's face darkened, her eyes flashing with bitterness. Fine, believe her, but don't come running back when she's crying in the night and you're too busy to handle it. I'm the only one who's been here, You'll regret this, Elise. You'll see. Get out. Elise said coldly. For the first time since she'd come into my life, Helen looked small, powerless. She opened her mouth to argue, but Elise's glare stopped her cold. With a frustrated huff, Helen grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. Don't ever come back, Elise called after her. The door slammed, the echo rattled the windows, and then silence. A silence so profound, I realized I'd been holding my breath for weeks, maybe months. Tears slipped down my cheeks. Elise turned to me, her own eyes glistening. She sank into the chair beside me and pulled me into her arms. I'm so sorry, Mom, she whispered. I should have seen it. I should have believed you sooner. I shook my head, clutching her hand. You're here now. That's all that matters. We sat like that for a long time, the weight of months of fear and manipulation melting away. For the first time in ages, I felt safe. The days that followed were strange, but healing. Elise stayed with me that weekend, cooking meals, helping around the house, laughing with me in a way we hadn't in years. The shadows Helen had cast began to lift, replaced by warmth and light. We didn't just move on, we grew stronger. Elise promised she'd visit more often, not out of guilt, but out of love. And I promised myself something too. Never again would I let someone silence me, make me doubt my own worth, or turn my love into a weakness. On Sunday evening, as Elise packed her things to leave, she turned to me and said, Mom, you're not alone anymore. Not ever again. And for the first time in a very long while, I believed it, because I had fought back, because I had spoken up, because the truth had finally been heard, and that was the greatest victory of all.